Sometimes we miss the point, and that is fine. We're all struggling with relationships. Maybe it's a relationship with ourselves, maybe it's body image, maybe it's relationship with food, maybe it is not knowing what to do in life, not having a direction, trying to find your purpose, not feeling like you've got friends, or like struggling with money. Whatever it is, as a whole, we all have the same core problems. All the challenges and the years of like hating myself and hating my body and not even being aware of that. Another thing that I realized is that my ego is fucking enormous. I have now had two business breakups in the space of a week. So I'm gonna play that for you now and just pay attention. I can tell you what, right now, it did not age well. Really clean. So to start this off, I just wanna say this. Do not let your self-doubt mask itself as intuition. Welcome back everybody to We Miss the Point. I am so excited to be here because when I say that everything has changed again, everything has changed again. So remember that business that I said I had? Gone. Remember the other one? Gone. So in this episode, we're gonna go through a lot of different things. And I might break it into smaller episodes, I'm not really sure. But basically, I've just realized a lot of things. And it's just gonna be a continual journey. And I think the biggest thing that I realized is that this is what I wanna be doing. You know, that might change obviously, but I think I just got really sidetracked with starting the businesses and it was great. But I lost all the excitement that I got from recording this and getting all my thoughts out. And I will say that I have had so many, just like, it's fireworks. Oh, my phone's gonna die, isn't it? No, not yet. It'll die when it dies. But like fireworks, that's how I'm explaining it. Like all the thoughts in my head, they're just like fireworks going off all the time. And it's awesome, like we love fireworks, but if there's always fireworks, then it doesn't seem so special. So I don't really know where I was going with that, but the point is, don't miss the point, is that I really need a space to be able to get out my thoughts and be able to understand what's going on in my head. And hopefully while doing that, which is what I've sort of realized, is that if I can unpack my thoughts and my perspectives and the new things that I'm learning, then hopefully if you guys are listening, then you're gonna be able to resonate and not necessarily agree with everything, because I think that in itself is not where we want to go. I don't want to make you think the way I think. I want you to use the thoughts and the realizations and the epiphanies and the brain pows that I've had to then integrate into your life and start to think about the things you're thinking and start to think about and wonder whether your perspective and your beliefs are benefiting you and they are helping you grow. If you want to change, you've got to change the way you think. You've got to change your beliefs about the world. You've got to quit those limiting beliefs, all of this stuff, right? We know this. But that is what I realized this podcast is going to be about, because I am not an expert in anything except for my life. Like I'm not, 50 with all these degrees and all this experience under my belt, like not at all. But the one thing that I do know is my life. And the one thing I do know is the things that I've been through and how I've overcome them. So what I'm going to do is just talk about them all the time. I'm just going to keep going on about all of the things that I've realized, all of the lessons I've learned, all of the mistakes I've made, all of the things I've had to overcome. And then hopefully someone listening is going to resonate. And yes, we're all different. Yes, we've all been through different experiences, but at the end of the day, we've all got the same problems when it comes down to it. We're all struggling with, maybe it's relationships, maybe it's a relationship with ourselves, maybe it's body image, maybe it's relationship with food, maybe it is not knowing what to do in life, not having a direction, trying to find your purpose, not feeling like you've got friends, or like struggling with money. Whatever it is, as a whole, we all have the same core problems. Yeah, they're going to be on different levels. Some are going to be worse than others. We're going to perceive them differently, but we do have the same problems. So if I can just be vulnerable, share all of the shit that I'm like going through, have been through, and the way that I'm thinking about them, then hopefully it'll just shake up the way you think and be like, I've actually experienced that too. Maybe I could think about it that way, or maybe I could integrate this and just give it a go. Because at the end of the day, that is what this podcast is called. It's called We Miss the Point, and it's realizing that the way you thought, the way you acted, the way you behaved, all of these things, they don't need to stay. And sometimes we miss the point, and that is fine. It's just how we've grown up, sort of taking on different people's opinions and beliefs and all of this stuff. And in order for us to understand ourselves, in order for us to get to a place where we are happy and content and fulfilled, we need to be able to identify what thoughts we truly want to have and sort of what perspective of the world we want to have, I think it comes down to. So with that being said, we're going to go into the first sort of topic for this episode. And that is the fact that I have now had 2 business breakups 2 business breakups in the space of a week. So basically, in the last podcast and the one before, I touched on the fact that I'd started 2 new businesses. Both of them were in AI and like technology and consulting and stuff like that, right? Now, the first one just sort of ended, but it's the second one that I really want to speak about, because about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I basically messaged my business partner at the time, and I said, hey, look, I'm not feeling this, you know, I'm a bit overwhelmed. Basically just said that like I wasn't in it. I didn't have the connection, I didn't have the drive, I didn't have the motivation, I didn't have the excitement behind the business. I just didn't feel aligned with it, okay? So I sent him this message and I was like, yeah, done. Anyway, he then called me and was like, look, completely respect your decision, but at the end of the day, business is going to be hard. It's going to feel overwhelming. It's going to be scary. Are you sure you're not just sort of chickening out of it? And I was like, holy shit, I'm being a bitch. Like, I'm just being a pussy. What am I doing, Zoe? Like, you know this. You know that business is going to be hard. Starting a business is going to be hard. Getting out of your comfort zone is going to be hard. So, me on my high horse then went home and recorded a podcast episode. So I'm going to play you sort of a snippet from the podcast episode in a second. And you will hear me going on about how I realized that my intuition cannot be trusted, and that sometimes our intuition is basically masked as like fear. I'd come to the conclusion that the intuition I thought I felt by sending the message of being like, this isn't for me, I then thought to myself that that was actually fear. I was like, no, that wasn't my intuition. That was fear. I was too scared of like doing the uncomfortable thing. I was trying to chicken out. I was being a little bitch, right? So I'm going to play that for you now, and just pay attention. I can tell you what, right now, it did not age well. Really clear. So to start this off, I just want to say this. Do not let your self-doubt mask itself as intuition. What I mean by that is that life is hard, and it's always going to be. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep moving forward and you shouldn't keep putting in the work, even when it's uncomfortable and even when it's hard. Now, basically, I'm going to tell a bit of a story. So the other day, I nearly made the worst decision of my life. And the funny thing is that I would have had absolutely no idea. The other night, it was about 2 days ago, I had been feeling super overwhelmed, obviously, which is why the last podcast was sort of made. I went to bed and I was like, I'm going to wake up early, I'm going to go for my walk, go for a swim, and then just get to writing straight away. Anyway, I woke up and like, I literally felt so shit. Like I felt so just like I instantly woke up with like thoughts running through my head, and I was like, fuck, here we go. Anyway, so I went for a walk and I went for a swim, and I sort of got to my laptop and like, keep in mind, it's probably 6:30 at this time. The sun's rising. Like normally this is when I'm at my peak. Like it's a beautiful sunrise. I'm sitting there with my laptop about to do some writing, looking out to the beach, and I just couldn't. Like I started to try and write, but it was just like negative, and it was like, I don't know, it was just all over the place. And I decided in that moment that the problem was that I was working too much, and that the business was just not working. So anyway, what I did was I decided to go home, and I wrote up this message, and I basically sent it to my business partner, who, I don't know if he'd be listening to this, but fucking shout out if you are. I basically was like, I can't do this. I'm really sorry. It's not you, it's me. I just don't see myself being able to progress in this business. He called me up and he's like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, stop being a silly goose. Like, this is literally what happens in business. You know, it's going to get hard. Whether you quit at this one and then move on to the next business, you're always going to get to a point where you kind of have doubts and you're not sure and you're feeling like overwhelmed. That's normal. This is what hard feels like. Remember Alex Amosi? The funny thing is that in that moment when we were having that conversation, I felt in my gut, my intuition, I was like, oh my God, of course. Like, this is what hard feels like. Like, I almost let myself slip into the easy way out, okay? This is what I want to push today. The stories we tell ourselves are so deep, they can be so unconscious that we're not even aware of the impact that they're having on our lives. I realized that I was telling myself a story that was completely untrue. It's crazy to think that, you know, I've done so much work, I've listened to so many podcasts, I've read so many books, like I know that this happens, but I still found myself falling straight back into that. Our brains are programmed to make sense of the world by using stories. These stories are obviously based off our belief systems, and they have a very big impact on the way that we act and the way that we think
and the way we view ourselves and the way we view the world. And so what I realized was that the story that I was telling myself regarding the business was more that I was freeing myself of the pressure, and I was doing something for me. And at the time I was trying to see both sides, and I was like, are you being irrational? Is the ADHD taking over? Like, don't be impulsive. And I really thought that I was making a good decision, but what I realized was that I was just telling myself a very, very good story. And at the end of the day, all I was doing was alleviating myself of, you know, the stress and the fear and everything like that, which isn't negative, but I realized very quickly, especially on the phone call, that if I had have let that go, I would have been in an even worse position a couple of days later, when or probably a couple of hours later really, that I would have realized, oh my God, I can't believe I just let myself do that, you know? And whether, as I said before, maybe I wouldn't have realized, but it just got me thinking that how many other situations in my life is this happening? You know, how many other situations are there in a day-to-day situation or a week-to-week situation that I'm making a decision, thinking it's the right decision, based off the story that I'm telling myself, when in reality, it's completely skewed.
Yeah, as you can see, I was very, very sure that the decision I had made to end it was actually the wrong decision, and I was acting out of fear. I can tell you right now, there was no aged fine wine in that situation, because guess what? We quit last night again. So basically, look, over the past few days, I have just been feeling off. Like, I think the past month or so of working on the business was super, super full on, and it was so, like, I was learning so much. I learned about sales, I learned about marketing, I learned about advertising, I was doing cold calls, I was writing emails. We were just learning a lot of things. I can't think of everything, but it was a lot, and it was so, so good. But it got to a point where I just started to realize that the actual business itself, being, you know, AI and consulting, it just wasn't what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to be talking to people about business, but just going through life and trying new things and like overcoming shit, right? Which just wasn't that. And so I had this realization. I was like, fuck, like, this isn't what I want to do. This isn't what I wanted to do. And that episode that I just showed you, I'd recorded about 2 to 3 weeks ago, but I hadn't even had the chance to post it. I kept being like, I want to sit down and post it. I want to upload. I want to be doing the podcast. I want to be starting to make content, all of this stuff. But because I was so like engulfed in the business, I didn't have any time, which now is a blessing in disguise, because, well, I canned it again. So yeah, that's where I am now. I ended up sending him a message and just being like, look, I'm so sorry, this just isn't gonna work, whatever. And then we jumped on a call, and I don't think you'd be listening to this, but my God, you are a legend. Like, he is literally the best person ever. And I know he's not listening to this, but a little bit of a crush, guys. I think that's why I stayed in it so long, because I was kind of like, fuck, he's kind of cute. Anyway, we move on. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah, no, so that's what I wanted to talk about, is that I obviously had this realization that, holy shit, I don't want to do this. And I was like, I was right in the first place. Like, I needed to just trust my gut in the first place and be like, this isn't what I want to do. But I was so caught up in like, whether it was impressing him, I don't think that was a big part of it, but I'm sure there was a part of me that wanted to prove myself and show that I could do this. And even to the people that I had talked about with the business, I'm sure I wanted to prove that I could do it. But I realized very quickly that it just wasn't aligned to me. I didn't have the passion and the interest in doing this business. And the lesson that I kind of want to, or the thing that I want to speak about in regards to this, and it can be applied to so many different things, whether it's a relationship or, you know, a breakup or something like that. I think we're so quick to just assume that, you know, that first gut feeling just can't be right. Or at least this is for me. Maybe you guys won't relate to this. I did do some research last night, and it's very common for people with ADHD to actually have a really strong intuition. And I had never come across this idea before, because I have always got such a strong, I didn't know the word was intuition. Like, probably in the past year or two, I started reading more about, or like going more into the spiritual side of things, and people would bring up intuition, and I sort of understood it for sure, but I never trusted it, because to me, I've always grown up with people saying, Zoe, stop being so impulsive. You're so impulsive. You keep making like rash decisions. And when I look back, none of them have really been bad. I'm sure there's a couple, I just can't think of any right now. But I don't think any of those initial first gut decisions have actually ever led me down the wrong path. If anything, they've led me on the right path. You know, realistically, these businesses, they were so good in the sense that I learned so much more than I would have learned if I had just kept doing this. You know, I learned all about like sales and stuff, as I said before, but I don't think that this was by any means the wrong thing to do. But it's just interesting that when I did sort of realize about 2 weeks ago that, you know, maybe I needed to pull the pin, when I fought back against that inner knowing of this isn't right, I then ended up in the same position 2 weeks later, which thank God it was only 2 weeks. And it just really got me thinking about my intuition and just like learning when to trust yourself. And I know that, yeah, you should always trust yourself, but I guess we have these feelings of, you know, knowing that we need to do something, or knowing that we have to have this conversation, or knowing that the situation we're in just isn't right, but we don't take the action because we're too scared of the consequences. Or maybe like me, you doubt that sort of part of you that actually knows. And I was listening to this really interesting bit of, I think it was a podcast, but it was this like neuroscience guy talking, and he was saying that when you are living your life, especially if you've got ADHD, you're very observant of everything, right? You're always paying attention, and you're always overthinking. Maybe not overthinking, you're always thinking about things. We are thought magnets, okay? So you're always got things going through your head. Now, because of that, there's actually a lot of that is going into your subconscious sort of, you know, brain. So when we are faced with a decision that consciously we're not actually aware of what's happening, but all of those things that we've thought about and all that stuff that's in our subconscious sort of brain, right, is leading this decision. So when we have that gut feeling, there's just all of this information, prior information from your past experiences, and knowing what you want and knowing what works for you and knowing what situations are going to put you in the right direction. I'm not sure exactly how to word it, but there is all of this sort of like inner knowing from your past experiences that then are guiding you. So that gut feeling isn't necessarily just like popping up from thin air. Maybe in some situations, I haven't looked enough into the spiritual side of it to fully understand that, but there is a lot of science behind that gut feeling actually being guided by your past experiences. So especially when you have ADHD and you're so observant and you're so aware and you're always thinking, it actually can be a lot stronger and can actually lead you in the right direction a lot, in a lot of cases. I don't know if that made sense, but it was a really cool thought. So yeah, that was kind of like that whole business. So I guess now we're back to the drawing boards, which is kind of exciting, honestly. And I think now, like, I woke up feeling so refreshed. Like, I just felt like there was a weight lifted off me, and I was like, yes, like I get to just go and write and start now planning like this content, the stuff that I love, and like learning more about psychology. And one thing that I might touch on it now, actually. Do I feel like it? Yeah, I think I will. Okay, so one thing that I'm really going to talk a lot more about, and it's something that is going to be a bit more difficult to talk about, and I will put a trigger warning actually. I am going to be talking about, like, I don't even want to call it eating disorders, because I think there's so much of not a focus, but almost this stigma around eating disorders. I feel like it can be a bit of a buzzword of, oh, I've got an eating disorder, and I don't want that to come across, look, I think this is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people, and I definitely don't want to make anyone feel like their experience is invalid or anything like that. But I am going to start talking about it, and my experience. It's funny because I have recorded a couple of episodes on my experience with I don't want to call it an eating disorder. I know that's what it is, but like, I was never diagnosed, okay? Like, I was never diagnosed with an eating disorder. And I think that's the craziest part, because you look at the statistics, and I don't have the statistics with me right now. I'll do a more in-depth episode another time. I don't want to get too in-depth with this topic today. I probably will. If you guys are interested, I will go more in-depth into it another time for sure, and probably continue to, because it comes back to that intuition. I have just always had this feeling inside of me that I needed to speak about this stuff, and there's not enough people talking about it. I know there's like the odd TikTok account or the odd YouTube or the odd podcast that does mention eating disorders, and I think that's why I really do want to talk about it, because, you know, normally if I'm trying to like research a new topic, I'll go on YouTube or I'll go on, for me, podcasts, I love listening to that, and I'll look at the sort of top content of what people are interested in learning about. And there's just nothing on eating disorders. Like, there are some things, and there's definitely profiles. I don't want to say there's nothing, but there's just not enough people talking about it. And I find within my friends, like, no one will bring it up at all. And then someone will just mention that they're struggling with X, Y, and Z. And it just creates this, oh yeah, like, you know, I actually kind of experienced that a bit too. Or yeah, you know, like, there are so many people that are struggling with an eating disorder. And the fucked thing is that there are these statistics like showing how much it's increasing. And I have never been diagnosed. I can't even imagine how many people hopefully are going to listen to this and be like, well, I've never been diagnosed either, but you best believe I meet all the criteria. Like, yeah, you can't self-diagnose yourself, but when you've had an eating disorder for 4 years, well, 3 years and now at least a year in recovery, which is still comes on and off, you best believe that you know you have that eating disorder, which is why I don't want to call it an eating disorder, because yes, it is that, but I think at the end of the day, it then sort of, it doesn't validate people that haven't been diagnosed. And I think for myself for so long, I was like, that's not me. And, you know, I went to a psychologist and they were like, oh, you seem fine. Like, you seem fine. I'll do that story time another time. Because basically, I went to a psych. My mum was like, look, maybe you should just see someone. And still, we had never spoken about me potentially having an eating disorder. It was very hush-hush. And that's not my mum's fault at all. It was just me not wanting to admit it. And I went to a psychologist and they were like, you seem fine, sweetie. Like, you seem so good. And I'm like, this tiny little thing. Anyway, that's a story for another time. And I felt so invalidated, and I just felt like, you know, and we hear this a little bit with the people that are talking about eating disorders, that you just don't feel like you're sick enough. You don't feel like you're struggling enough, and that you don't have it as bad as other people, okay? And I don't want that to be a comparison at all. I don't think you should ever be like, oh, well, I'm not struggling as much as this person, because that's not the point. The point is that if you have a poor relationship with your body or food or exercise, whatever it is, we need to fix that. Like, now looking back at myself, and look, I'm definitely not 100%, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. Look, I think maybe I will do a full episode on this, but I want to have some notes sort of ready so that I'm able to actually talk about it and get all my points out. But I think the reason why I wanted to tie this back into today's episode is because I've been feeling lately that this is the stuff that I really can speak on. I can speak on, you know, all the challenges and the years of like hating myself and hating my body and not even being aware of that, and the implication that that had on my social connections, my relationships, my relationship with myself. And only now, about a year into like properly recovering, am I able to identify, fuck, my relationship with food is so bad. And like, it's not that I was actively thinking, oh, I can't have that, but there were so many rules. Only now am I starting to be able to break down and be like, shit, like, I keep telling myself subconsciously that like, I actually can't have that, but of course I can have that. And only now am I starting to realize that. Only now am I paying attention to, holy shit, I don't have a period. We need to work on that. Or there's just a lot of things that now I'm realizing just how much of an impact that it had on my life. And I think when you're in there, when you're like really deep in the eating disorder, all you want to do is get out of it. You know, you just want to stop. And I can go more in depth into what I mean by that, but you obviously want to escape the eating disorder, but it's almost your safety net, right? It's almost your safety. And I think about the times that I really did get out of it for a while, it then was just met with another sort of form of addiction in that sense. I didn't fully recover until I sort of started these businesses. And even like the podcast in general, I think giving myself that sort of purpose allowed me to not be alone with myself. And that's the key here, that I realized lately that I wasn't fully able to heal and escape the eating disorder until I was able to understand myself, understand my thoughts, and start to balance myself emotionally and regulate myself, and start to understand that I was not feeling anything. I was just thinking. One of the things that I really noticed is that it was majorly tied to body image, which I did not ever think. I did not think that I had an issue with my body image, and now I realize I've got a massive issue with my body image, and I really want to speak about this on this channel. I want to talk to you guys and really like bring up all of the things that we've been thinking and telling ourselves, and just how much of an impact it has on our lives, because it's ridiculous. Another thing that I realized is that my ego is fucking enormous. because I'm going to get into this in another episode, I realized it's enormous because I never allowed myself, I never validated myself to feel like I was doing enough. So I always had to pull people down in my head. Like, it was never overtly, and if I don't think so, but I always felt like I needed to pull people down in my brain, because I never gave myself the validation to be like, oh, like, you are enough, or you're doing well in this instance. You know, I was writing the other day and I came across this thing and it was like, oh, you should write down 5 things that you're good at. I literally looked at the page and I was like, nothing. I'm not good at anything. And I realized in that moment that, holy shit, all of this work that I've been doing on myself, I've still never allowed myself to sit down and be like, you know what, Zoe, you're actually really good at this. I've never ever sat down and been like, I'm actually really proud of myself for this. And it comes like, you know, people say that they do the self-affirmations, and I've never done that. I've always thought it was stupid. Okay, I've done the gratitude, I've done the journaling, like all of those things, but the last piece of that, well, generally, you know, people go, oh, you should do journaling, you should do that, you should do the affirmations. I've never done that because I always thought it was stupid. And now I'm looking back, I'm like, I think I've just always been so terrified to open up and admit to myself that I could be okay at something. And I think then that's why I had this massive ego, and I'd get so jealous of people, and I would pull people down in my head and put people on pedestals and put people in pits, which we're going to go on to in another episode, which is going to be great, because I just kept feeling like, because I didn't allow myself to feel like I was enough, and because I didn't allow myself to feel like I was enough, I was always jealous of others and always putting them above me or below me to try and make myself feel better, you know. And so realizing that has been really interesting, because now it's been trying to figure out, okay, Zoe, like, what are you actually good at? Like, what are you proud of yourself for? I know I did a whole episode on how you shouldn't be proud, and that you should just be like happy and not happy. You should just be content and know that what you're doing is enough. But I didn't have that. Like, I think I still agree with that episode, but I do think that you're allowed to be proud of yourself. You're allowed to feel good and be like excited by your achievements and know that you are doing a good job. And so we can go into that in another episode. I feel like I've said that a lot, but I just wanted this to sort of be like a good little, just like a fun chat, like a debrief of like where we're sort of going next and what's going to be happening. And look, there's a lot of things to come, and I've got so many ideas now of what we can talk about, and I would just really appreciate that if anyone is listening to this, please let me know what you guys want to hear. And I'm going to start posting on my main account, so that is terrifying, but I'm going to turn that account into my main account, and I'm just going to start posting like videos, reels, all this shit, and like make it fun, because I'm just sick of watching the same shit on social media. Like, I feel like everyone's videos look the same. I don't know how to make it different yet, but I'm like figuring it out. So yeah, dude, I'm just really excited. I'm like excited to be back. And that's for now. Ooh, 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 ooh.